When I first moved into the neighborhood, I thought I was just buying a peaceful piece of property with a quiet lake. Within days, however, the Homeowners Association showed up at my doorstep, insisting that I had to give up access to their lake. They waved around rules, fines, and threats, certain they were in control. But as I dug into the property deeds, I uncovered something shocking. Not only did I legally own the lake, but the HOA's prized community docks were technically sitting on my water rights. They had no authority to demand anything from me. In fact, they were dependent on my permission all along. What started as them trying to intimidate me quickly flipped. I went from being the new neighbor they thought they could push around to the one person holding leverage over their most cherished amenity. Instead of conflict, I decided to take a diplomatic path. I opened the door for cooperation, making it clear that respect goes both ways. In the end, the HOA learned a hard lesson in boundaries, and I learned the importance of standing firm when you know your rights.
Know what you own is one of the most crucial lessons any property owner, new homeowner, or even potential buyer should take seriously. Many people purchase property with excitement, imagining the life they will build there, but often they overlook the fine print in their deed, the easements tied to their land, or the rights that are either granted or restricted through ownership. Understanding exactly what you own is not simply about knowing where your fence line ends or where the mailbox stands. It is about truly comprehending the full scope of legal rights, responsibilities, and privileges that come with the property. This knowledge is your foundation, your shield, and in many cases, your leverage when disputes rise. When you move into a neighborhood, particularly one with a homeowners association, there may be assumptions made by those around you. HOAs often act with a sense of authority and can project power over rules and community spaces. But authority is not ownership. Just because a group manages or oversees common areas or enforces guidelines for appearances and upkeep does not automatically mean they own every piece of land or water within sight. Without reviewing your property's deed, title report, or survey, it is easy to accept their words at face value. Yet when you take the time to read through the documentation, you may find unexpected rights, such as access to shared spaces, exclusive ownership of certain features, or even protections against encroachment. In the case of the lake, the Homeowners Association believed it belonged to them because they used it regularly and maintained docks on it. However, usage does not equal ownership. Only the deed and recorded property documents determine true ownership. By studying those records, it became clear that the lake itself was private property belonging to the new homeowner, and the HOA had no legal claim over it. This discovery instantly shifted the dynamic. It turned what initially looked like a situation of weakness, being the new neighbor pressured by an established group, into a position of strength. That strength was not born from aggression or stubbornness, but from knowledge. Knowing exactly what you own allows you to stand firm when others try to push boundaries. Education in property ownership extends beyond protecting yourself from overreach. It also prevents accidental violations on your part. For instance, if you assume you have unrestricted rights to a wooded area behind your house, but that land is actually a conservation easement or utility access corridor, you could face penalties for cutting trees or building on it. Similarly, failing to understand water rights, mineral rights, or air rights tied to your land could result in losing valuable opportunities. Some property owners discover too late that they do not own the subsurface mineral rights, meaning someone else could extract resources from beneath their land. Others are surprised to learn that their private road is actually maintained as a public easement, leaving them with less control than they expected. These examples highlight that ignorance is not an excuse, and clarity is essential. Knowing what you own also gives you confidence in negotiations and interactions with neighbors or governing bodies. If a boundary dispute arises, having your survey and deed information on hand allows you to address it with certainty rather than speculation. If an HOA demands something outside their scope, you can calmly present documentation showing your rights. And if you wish to sell your property in the future, being knowledgeable about its unique features, such as water rights or dock privileges, can increase its value because you can market those elements accurately and confidently. Ultimately, ownership is not just a legal concept, it is empowerment. When you know the boundaries, rights, and responsibilities of your property, you are less likely to be taken advantage of, more likely to protect your investment, and better equipped to make decisions that benefit you in the long run. The phrase, "know what you own," is not simply about paperwork. It is about claiming agency over your space, ensuring no one else controls it without your consent, and recognizing that sometimes the greatest strength in a dispute is not force or argument, but the quiet certainty of knowing the facts.
Don't be intimidated by authority figures is a principle that extends far beyond property disputes or neighborhood associations. It is a life lesson that applies in business, community, and personal affairs. Human beings are naturally conditioned to respect authority, and in many situations, this respect is necessary for order and cooperation. But there is a difference between respecting authority and being intimidated by it. Intimidation often leads to giving up your rights, silencing your voice, or allowing yourself to be pushed into decisions that do not serve your best interests. Learning to separate the appearance of authority from its actual scope is a critical skill for protecting yourself and maintaining balance in any interaction. In the context of homeowners associations, intimidation often shows up in the form of formal letters, threats of fines, or officials arriving with an air of control. For a new homeowner, this can feel overwhelming. After all, you may be unfamiliar with the rules, unsure of your rights, and eager to avoid conflict in your new community. This is exactly where intimidation thrives, in uncertainty. But the truth is that authority figures, even those acting within legal frameworks, are not all-powerful. They are bound by regulations, limited by documents, and accountable to systems of checks and balances. Once you realize that, the intimidation begins to lose its grip. Authority, when misused, often leans on fear rather than fact. A board or governing body may use official language, legal jargon, or group pressure to convince individuals to comply. Yet when you pause and examine the situation, you often find that their claims exceed their actual power. In the case of the HOA demanding access to the lake, the attempt to intimidate was clear. They presented themselves as the ruling body of the neighborhood and assumed their rules automatically applied. However, their authority had boundaries, and those boundaries stopped where private ownership began. Understanding this difference between perceived authority and actual authority made it possible to resist intimidation without being confrontational. It is important to recognize that intimidation can be subtle. Sometimes it is not loud threats or legal notices, but quiet pressure, like being told, "This is how we've always done it," or "Everyone else complies, why don't you?" These tactics prey on the human instinct to fit in and avoid conflict. But yielding to intimidation creates a precedent. Once you allow yourself to be pressured into surrendering your rights, it becomes harder to reclaim them later. Standing your ground early, even in small ways, establishes respect and makes it clear that you are not someone who can be easily manipulated. Overcoming intimidation requires preparation and confidence. Preparation means doing your research, reading the rules, understanding your documents, and knowing exactly where authority begins and ends. Confidence comes from reminding yourself that no matter how official someone appears, they are not above accountability. Government officials answer to laws, boards answer to bylaws, and associations answer to the very agreements that define their existence. If you're equipped with knowledge and willing to assert yourself calmly, authority figures will often step back once they realize you cannot be easily swayed by appearances alone. This lesson does not mean you should dismiss or disrespect authority figures altogether. Healthy respect for legitimate authority is essential for cooperation and progress. But respect is very different from fear. Respect acknowledges the role and responsibilities of authority. Fear gives them more control than they actually hold. The key is balance. Acknowledge the structure, listen carefully, and engage diplomatically, but refuse to let intimidation force you into submission. When you adopt this mindset, you not only protect your own rights, but also contribute to healthier dynamics in your community or workplace. Authority figures who rely on intimidation quickly learn that such tactics do not work on you. In turn, this can encourage them to operate with more transparency, fairness, and accountability. By resisting intimidation, you are not just protecting yourself, you're raising the standard for how authority should behave. Ultimately, "Don't be intimidated by authority figures" is a call to stand tall in the face of pressure. It reminds us that power often depends on perception, and once that perception is challenged, its grip weakens. Whether you are dealing with an HOA, a boss, or a local official, the principle remains the same. Authority must be respected, but intimidation should never be obeyed. When you understand this, you reclaim your voice, your confidence, and your ability to navigate challenges with strength and clarity.
Leverage can be hidden is a principle that reveals how much power people often overlook in situations where they feel disadvantaged. In many disputes, negotiations, or even everyday interactions, one party appears to have control while the other feels cornered. Yet, appearances can be deceiving. Leverage is not always obvious, and often the very thing others want from you is what gives you the upper hand. Recognizing hidden leverage requires awareness, patience, and a willingness to look beyond the surface of a situation. In the case of the lake and the Homeowners Association, the HOA stormed in, assuming they controlled the lake and the activities around it. Their confidence came from their long history of managing the neighborhood and enforcing rules. To them, the docks on the lake were a symbol of their authority. But hidden within the property records was a detail they had overlooked. The lake itself belonged to the new homeowner. That simple fact flipped the balance of power. What they thought was theirs was actually dependent on someone else's permission. The hidden leverage was not in challenging them directly, but in holding ownership of the very resource they sought to control. Hidden leverage exists in many areas of life. In negotiations, for example, people may assume the party with more money or influence holds all the cards. Yet leverage can come from something as simple as having unique knowledge, controlling access to a resource, or even possessing patience when the other side is desperate for a quick resolution. A job candidate may believe they are powerless before a large company. But if their skills are rare and in demand, they hold significant leverage. A consumer might feel small in front of a corporation, but public opinion and the ability to share their experience widely can shift the dynamic entirely. The reason leverage often remains hidden is because people focus on what they lack rather than what they control. When facing pressure, the instinct is to think about the authority, resources, or numbers on the other side. This focus blinds individuals to their own strengths. Yet, if you take the time to analyze the situation, ask what the other party truly values, and look at what they cannot achieve without your cooperation, leverage starts to reveal itself. In the HOA story, the docks had no purpose without the water. The association could enforce rules on appearance and landscaping, but they could not dictate ownership of a natural resource that legally belonged to someone else. The homeowner's quiet discovery of this fact transformed the situation. Understanding hidden leverage is not about becoming manipulative or confrontational. It is about leveling the field so you are not taken advantage of. When you recognize where your leverage lies, you can enter discussions calmly, knowing you have something essential to contribute. This creates confidence and allows you to negotiate from a position of strength. For instance, instead of responding with anger or compliance, the new homeowner could approach the HOA with the knowledge that cooperation was a choice, not an obligation. That simple shift in perspective turned intimidation into opportunity. Another important aspect of hidden leverage is that it often lies in intangibles. Trust, credibility, or the ability to build alliances can be more powerful than money or rules. In communities, being seen as fair, reasonable, and willing to collaborate can give you influence that others overlook. Hidden leverage may also come from timing. Waiting for the right moment to assert your position when the other side needs you most can maximize your impact. Recognizing hidden leverage requires both self-awareness and situational awareness. You must know what you bring to the table, but you must also observe what the other party depends on. The key is to move beyond surface appearances and dig into the underlying connections that make the situation possible. Once you identify these connections, you realize that leverage is rarely one-sided. Even the party that appears weakest often holds a crucial piece of the puzzle. Ultimately, leverage can be hidden, teaches us that power is not always loud or obvious. It often lies quietly in overlooked details, waiting for someone perceptive enough to uncover it. Whether it's property rights, unique skills, or even patience in a negotiation, leverage exists in ways that can turn the tide of any situation. By training yourself to look deeper and recognize these hidden advantages, you not only protect yourself from being overpowered, but also open doors to solutions that honor your position. The key is not to seek control, but to understand balance and to use leverage responsibly to achieve outcomes that are fair and sustainable.
Lead with cooperation, not conflict, is a principle that emphasizes the value of diplomacy, patience, and constructive problem-solving when facing disputes or challenges. While it may be tempting to respond to pressure with equal force, conflict often escalates situations unnecessarily, creating long-term hostility and mistrust. Cooperation, on the other hand, can open doors to solutions that respect both sides, preserve relationships, and build stronger communities. This approach does not mean surrendering your rights or ignoring injustices. Rather, it means choosing a path that seeks mutual benefit instead of destruction. In the story of the homeowner and the HOA, once it became clear that the new resident actually owned the lake, there was an opportunity to retaliate. The homeowner could have denied all access to the docks, forced the association to remove them, or demanded payment for their continued use. Legally, this would have been within their rights, but such an approach would have fueled resentment and ongoing conflict. Instead, by choosing to lead with cooperation, the homeowner maintained control without alienating the community. Offering fair terms, setting boundaries respectfully, and emphasizing shared interests allowed everyone to benefit while avoiding needless battles. Conflict often feels like the most natural response when we are challenged. When someone storms in making demands or tries to assert authority unfairly, the instinct is to push back with equal energy. Yet this reaction frequently leads to a cycle of escalation. Each side digs in, communication breaks down, and the focus shifts from solving the problem to winning the fight. In property disputes, workplace disagreements, or even family issues, this cycle rarely produces true resolution. The damage caused by conflict, strained relationships, wasted time, and emotional stress often outweighs the benefits of winning.
Cooperation, by contrast, encourages dialogue. It invites both parties to share their needs, identify common ground, and create solutions that respect the concerns of everyone involved. In the HOA case, the association valued access to the docks because they enhanced the community's lifestyle. The homeowner valued peace, respect, and acknowledgement of their ownership rights. By leading with cooperation, the homeowner could say, in effect, "I am not here to take something away, but I expect fairness in return." This type of approach transforms the relationship from adversarial to collaborative. There is also a practical advantage to cooperation. When you show willingness to work together, you build goodwill, which can be valuable in future interactions. Today's opponent may become tomorrow's ally. By setting a precedent of fairness and respect, you strengthen your position not just for one dispute, but for all future dealings. A cooperative stance also places you in the role of problem solver rather than troublemaker, which can shape how others perceive you in a community or organization. This perception can become its own form of leverage, as people are more likely to trust and support someone who consistently seeks fair outcomes. Leading with cooperation requires emotional control and perspective. It means resisting the urge to react impulsively and instead asking, what outcome will serve me best in the long run? Sometimes that outcome may still require firmness, but when firmness is combined with fairness, it is harder to challenge. Cooperation does not mean weakness. It means strategically choosing diplomacy first while keeping the option of assertiveness in reserve if necessary. An important point to remember is that cooperation does not guarantee that the other side will respond in kind. Some parties may continue to push aggressively, seeing cooperation as an opportunity to take more. In such cases, the advantage of beginning with cooperation is that you establish a clear record of fairness. If conflict eventually becomes unavoidable, you stand on solid ground, having demonstrated reasonableness from the start. This not only strengthens your position legally or socially, but also earns respect from neutral observers. Ultimately, lead with cooperation, not conflict, is about seeking solutions that preserve both dignity and community. In the story of the homeowner and the HOA, cooperation created a path forward where rights were protected, respect was established, and relationships were not irreparably damaged. In broader life, the same principle applies. By approaching challenges with a cooperative mindset, you reduce hostility, uncover creative solutions, and build stronger foundations for the future. Conflict may win battles, but cooperation wins peace, and peace is the environment in which true growth and stability thrive.